Hello, MotoAmerica fans, and welcome to this latest edition of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. We are fresh from Daytona International Speedway in our first round of the season, and also our first round at the World Center of Racing. This is Sean Bice, and I am the sidekick to our communications manager, Paul Carruthers. Good morning, Paul. You made it back to Southern California. Is that about the longest trip that you make to go from Florida or from California to Florida?
Yeah, I guess it would be. And we ran into all sorts of problems, and we ended up getting back a day later than what we were supposed to get back because flights were canceled. And it was this when we got to Orlando Airport on, what would that be, Sunday morning. I've never seen an airport that busy. Well, maybe in Europe or something, where things are a little nuttier, but the airport was packed, and it's like spring breakers and families that obviously went to Disney World, and it was a complete nightmare. Our flights were canceled, so we ended up having to go back and get the rent-a-car again. And then we went and found a hotel, and we hung out at the hotel, and then went to dinner, spent the night, and then the next morning we're able to fly home. We had to split up a little bit to make the flights work. So it was Doug and I were the last ones back. And then we had to fly into San Diego instead of Orange County. And that's, luckily it's only an hour or so away, but yeah, it was a pretty rough couple of days of traveling, but it could have been worse. There were some people that actually didn't have options about going and staying in hotels and stuff, and were, camped out in the airport. So consider us lucky when it comes to that we were able to do what we need to do to at least be more comfortable and not have too bad of a time. But yeah, it was a bit hectic, but man, I feel like I get jet lagged, but I think it's just from how busy we were down there, and it was just kind of, wears you out. And I'm just kind of feel like I got a little bit of a hangover from the whole thing. But it was an incredible Daytona for us. Obviously, it was MotoAmerica's first time. It was my first time back since 2013 or 2014, and I'd been there for 20 some years before that, all consecutively. And yeah, it was good to get back to Daytona, and I think we showed really well, thanks to the teams and the riders and everybody that participated, because we really put together what I thought was a Daytona 200 to remember. So it's exciting, and it shows what we're capable of doing. And I was kind of worried that people would continue to think it was, maybe a glorified club race still, but I think with what happened there, the quality of our racing, the quality of our fields, and the riders and the teams that we had there, it definitely felt like the Daytona 200 of old, and I think it'll only get better. So I'm really pumped, and I had a great weekend, great week, and yeah, I'm pumped.
Yeah, it was funny. There's a lot of unknowns that we had going into that. One of them, of course, was the weather, which, is, I don't know, Paul, you've been to a lot more Daytonas than I have. I know weather is always a factor we race in the rain in every other race, but certainly we don't at Daytona, and we weren't going to. So weather became a factor in rescheduling things here and there. But have you been to Daytona events when it's been kind of that off and on rain for the entire time we were there?
Yeah, I think so. I kind of recall, I might be wrong, but I kind of recall that we, before they got a little smarter and started moving the Daytona 200 to Saturday and using Sunday as a rain date, it was always on the Sunday. And I think I think there was a time when we actually might have run the race on the Monday because of weather. But it's crazy because, if you're from Florida, if you're familiar with that, then you know how quickly things change. There was a couple of mornings when I woke up this week and I was like, we're not getting anything done today. Right. And next thing you know, we moved the schedule around a little bit. It gets sunny, it dries out. They've got excellent equipment there, obviously, for NASCAR to dry the banking and the road course. And next thing you know, it's the end of the day and we got everything done. So it was kind of surprising, but I think it just shows with the way the weather changes there that you just kind of don't give up on a day and realize that you can probably get lucky and get things in. And that's what happened.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly things change down there. And like you said, it looked like we were going to be socked in, and it comes and goes. And it was a little bit breezy there, which helps along with the banking to dry that place off. But yeah, it was tremendous racing in every one of our classes. And, we were just talking about this in a meeting prior to this, but the great unknown was a little bit that balancing and the new model, the new bikes that are going to be racing in Supersport this year. And we had multiple makes in the top 10 in that thing. I mean, Ducati was on the pole with Josh Herron, but, he had some issues with a pit stop, and the other rider, the R6s, the Kawasaki's, the Suzuki's, and those Triumph 765s. I mean, everybody was in it with, obviously Brandon, getting the slingshot at the end, but it was not any make or model dominating at all. It was amazingly balanced, especially when, we don't know what it's going to be like at that track with the way the banking is and all the draft situations and everything. So it was every bit as exciting as we hoped it would be. That's for sure.
Yeah. The balancing thing I thought worked out great. I mean, if you didn't win the Daytona 200, it wasn't the balancing's fault. If you get what I'm saying. I mean, it's
That's
like,
right.
if whatever issues you may have had during the Daytona 200, it wasn't because your bike was mostly equal to anything out there. So I was a little worried going in, because I know it's not an easy thing to do, but we had the FIM guys there, and Scott Smart, and who's aptly named, I guess, when it comes to figuring that stuff out. But we had those guys there, and we didn't really, I couldn't tell that we had any issues. There might have been some stuff going on behind the scenes, but as far as what was seen out front, it was handled really well. And I mean, I kind of thought, like, I just remembered back to the first year of Junior Cup when we were trying to make the bikes equal. I think it was VIR. We got to VIR and there was some changes made or whatever, and it was just kind of messy. I mean, it wasn't, it didn't work as quickly as this, but this certainly came together. I think we should be set for the year when you think about it, because I mean, Daytona is basically a rolling dyno.
That's right. Yeah, it's crazy how that is. I mean, we had a lot of entries in all of the classes, and for sure in the Daytona 200. But there was one entry that wasn't there that I was a little surprised he wasn't there, because he's been sort of a super sport specialist for the past few years, and that's Nolan Lamkin. He's been racing a Yamaha R6 for a while, and he's been great with us. He always shares his data with us, and we share it with on our website and our social media for other riders who might want it. He's a very giving rider, and he's also very technically adept too. I mean, for him having a small team with his dad, he's always done a lot of stuff to develop super sport bikes. And he's our guest now, so let's bring Nolan on. He's been with us since the beginning. Nolan, you've been with us since 2015. You started in the KTM RC Cup. You've grown over the years in many, many ways. You're about 6'1" or 6'2" now. I mean, how tall are you at this point?
It depends on who's asking. Normally I say that I'm 6'1" or 6'2".
Okay, so I guess I've been talking to you right. I know I hate to do that to you guys, man. We have so many tall riders in our paddock that it's you probably get asked that all the time, don't you?
Well, it's kind of funny. Like, I kind of want to start charging people whenever they ask, because I could really make quite a bit of money. It's interesting because some riders try and minimize their height, like I do, and then others try and exaggerate it. Where I know one rider who says that he's 6'4", and he's not 6'4", he's 6'3". It's just kind of funny.
I know who that rider is, and I thought he was 6'4". So okay, interesting. But yet the other day it was funny on our Discord server, which is a new thing we have where a lot of fans have joined the discussion. Somebody tried to say that Sam Lockoff is 5'5", and he's actually 5'8". And I mean, a couple 3 inches makes a difference. And I told him here down at Daytona, I was like, somebody was trying to say you were 5'5", and he kind of looked at me like he wasn't too happy to hear that. But I said, I corrected him. Don't worry, I got your back. So, but let's get around the stature and talk about the fact that you have raced a super sport bike for a while. You've been on a Yamaha R6, and you're one of the guys that puts an interesting setup on your seat to raise it up. So tell us about that for a minute, and then we're going to transition into, it sounds like tell us why you didn't go to the 200, and then we'll talk about what you're doing this year, which is a little bit of a change for you. So start by talking about the setup on your R6 and that interesting seat you have.
So I've tried different things to get the bike to fit me ergonomically better. I am taller than what the bikes are kind of designed for. I've had a tank pad before. I've had different things. I run the OEM tank now. For my seat, I have a 7/8 inch riser on my R6 just to give me that little bit taller. Everybody always talks about being tall as a disadvantage, but it's not. There's certain things where it's very much an advantage, where as long as you're light, it doesn't really matter, where I still get great trap speeds. I'm on a Yamaha R6, but I'm always really, really high up there with my trap speeds. I can get drafts on it off of everybody. I can brake really well. Getting the bike to fit me is the biggest thing. I rode one of the older generation Yamaha R6s for a while, and getting that to fit me was a lot more difficult than the new R6. The new R6 just fits a lot better, fits a lot tighter, a lot cleaner, so I can get in a better tuck and different things like that. There's a clip from Road Atlanta earlier this past year where I was riding with Sam Lockoff, and one of the things that JP or Greg White mentioned is that with me in the tuck, you wouldn't know that I'm actually that tall. It's me and Sam Lockoff are one of the tallest and one of the shortest riders on the grid, but we don't really look that different going down the straightaway.
Wow. That's pretty impressive, actually. And, you mentioned JP. I know you work a lot with Jason Pridmore, and he thinks a lot of you, as we do too. So I'm sure that's helped your game a lot. You've gone on Chuck Wall a fair amount, which is where JP goes. But so we're a little surprised that you weren't in the 200 this year, but it sounds like it might have to do with how you're transitioning your program. So tell us why you didn't race there this year and what's ahead for you.
So this year I'm going to be racing a BMW S1000 RR in Stock 1000 and the Superbike Cup with Tom Wood Motorsports. So with Tom Wood, one of the great things that they have is they sell so many different brands of motorcycles. They sell everything from Yamaha to Kawasaki to BMW to everything. It's really, we can make a decision on what we wanted to do. The biggest thing was getting the time. It's a multi-year deal, so I didn't want to rush things in the beginning. I would have loved to have done Daytona, where because they have a Yamaha dealership, it still would be advantageous for them to do that. So that's really what I'm trying to work on for next year. I think that would be a great thing to do. But with the BMW and all the things that are coming along with that, that's really been my focus and my priority. So I just didn't have time and the ability to do both. I love to be able to do more endurance races and do that stuff, and doing the Daytona 200 would be a great stepping stone into those things. So that's really what I'm trying to focus on for next year, where I've built my own program. I've done so many different things, and it's really been trying to figure out what's the best for us. With racing being on the East Coast, I'm able to do a lot of things that people on the West Coast can't, just where I'm located to so many more of the racetracks. Being in Indianapolis, we're like 8 hours from each of the different tracks. So I personally drive our truck and trailer to the events and then drive it home after each weekend, because it's basically 8 hours to each event. Where if you're in different places, it could be 16 hours for you to get back from Wisconsin or some of those different things. So with this BMW and with the things coming together, I'm really excited where we've got many years to kind of work on the program, get things solid, and really get building for the future.
So two things I want to point out for the fans that are listening, Nolan, and one of them is that you were born in Indianapolis, lived there, based there, and Tom Wood Motorsports, I believe, is in Indianapolis as well. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I grew up driving past all their dealerships on the way to school in the morning. They've got this one road where it's like 15 car dealerships. They have a motorcycle dealership. They have a motorcycle dealership, Tom Wood Powersports in Anderson, and then they have an Indian dealership in Lafayette, Indiana. And also, one of the other things that people don't quite know is BMW Motorcycles of Richfield, which is in Minnesota, is also a part of that Tom Wood group. So We're actually going to be doing a special livery and some of that stuff for the MotoAmerica race at Brainerd, Minnesota this year.
Wow, that's a big organization. And I also want to point out too, people that talk about like another team has just announced, Tytler Cycle has just announced that they're going to be out there, and their guys are going to be riding the M1000 RR, which is a little bit different than the S1000 RR. But also Scheibe Racing announced yesterday that Ashton Yates is going to be on an S1000 RR, but Steve has been continuing to develop his older generation S1000 RR. So I want to point out that your bike is it in fact a 2022 bike? It's different. It looks different than the one that Scheibe has, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so we've got the bikes. They're delivered to Minneapolis now, and I believe they're the 2022, whatever the new version is. I don't know the exact thing. I don't know the VIN number yet either. So
yeah. And that bike looks a little bit different because I mean it's a little bit more, I guess you could say it's rounded, it's a little less angular, and it's kind of the bike similar to it's what Travis Wyman's been riding. But give us a little insight without giving away your secrets. But tell us, okay, you know Tom Wood, you've grown up around there. How did you approach them, and did they I assume the fact that you're from Indianapolis probably helped you to put this deal together? I mean, that's a big deal for a team as small as you guys are, Nolan, to make that happen. I mean, that's quite a coup for that brand, because, you know, we definitely want more BMWs on the grid. So just like I said, without telling any secrets, maybe you can just give the fans and people that maybe are trying to figure out how to get sponsors a little insight in how you did it.
Yeah. So the biggest thing for me with sponsors and deals and all the different things is I just try and be myself. I went to talk with the Anderson dealership, which is Yamaha, where I talked with them in August about trying to get them on board for Supersport for this year. And then the new rules for Supersport came out and some other different things came together. Tom Wood's opening up a new dealership in Indianapolis. They're moving with a new BMW dealership. So that's really the advantageous thing for them. And it's focusing on what are they actually getting out of it? I think a lot of racers focus on, oh, well, I'm doing this or I'm doing that, but it's how are you actually selling things for this brand? With Tom Wood, I'm from Indianapolis. They're the Indianapolis dealership group. There's also some special events that are going on in Indianapolis that aren't quite public yet, but those are also really interesting. I've ridden at Indianapolis Motor Speedway before. My nickname is Indy from Jason Pridmore in California. So I started out with that. We moved to the BMW, and that's really, I rode a BMW M1000 out in California at Chuckwalla when I was with Pridmore, and was able to meet Mark Boucher, who is one of the BMW experimental marketing guys, just to pick his brain on some different things. And the other thing that's just interesting for me is my grandmother is German. Both of her parents immigrated from Germany, and I took German in high school. So ich spreche ein bisschen auf Deutsch, but I'm very bad, like absolutely terrible. About 3 years in, they said, you know, you're about at the level of like understanding Dora in German, and I could barely do that. So really it's just trying to flounder my way through that. But overall, it's just so many different things are kind of coming together just in really unique ways. So yeah.
Okay, Sean, I think Nolan separated himself from every other guest we've ever had, because before we started the show, he called me sir, and then he just referred to you as sir. So
yes,
and it's probably why he gets sponsorship, because he's actually polite. So
very polite. Yeah.
Nolan, one of my questions is, because I don't know the answer, or else I wouldn't ask it, I guess. But do you have any experience on big bikes, like at club racing or anything like that, or have you mostly been 600 and smaller?
It's mostly been 600s. That's been the most financially feasible thing for me, my dad, and then the team to do. So that's what I've done. I've ridden 1,000 before when I've been with JP43 training and some of that stuff. I've been able to take out Jason's stock bikes. I rode the 1,000 at Chuckwalla. I don't have a plethora of big bike experience. Everybody that I've talked to said you'll do great on the bike, just the way that I ride and different things like that. But it is something new. So that's something I'm really excited for doing. The BMW has a lot more sophisticated electronics, but it's still running a bike at the end of the day.
Right. Now, you've been doing this for a while, as Sean pointed out in the beginning, and I know there's been some tough times. Have you ever gotten to the point where you were considering doing something else? I mean, has it ever gotten that far?
I mean, it's always been interesting. Like you said, I was one of the first riders. I was the youngest KTM Cup rider in 2015. I made the cutoff by like a few weeks or something like that. I just had my birthday last week, turning 21. So I've done a lot of things, and I'm only 21 years old. I worked in a machine shop at a time when I was 19 years old, working at Vance & Hines, building cylinder heads for different race teams. And it was actually kind of funny because I was working on different MotoAmerica teams and looking at their engines and saying like, oh, I built that piece, or helped. I don't really know that much, but it's I've always known what I've wanted to do. The issue for me is actually knowing how to get there. Everybody has advice on this is what you should do, or this is what you shouldn't do, but that's all based on what they've done in previous years, and it's not the same as what it is now. Going out and finding a ride 20 years ago is much different than going out and finding a ride now. So it's always just been kind of a work in progress. I do things that are interesting for me and what I find useful. I like racing bikes. I want to win races. That's what I want to do. I want to win championships. It's how to get there has been the difficult thing for me, and figuring out how to actually go about that. And that's where these last couple of years have really been formative for me. The different content and stuff that I make online, articles that I've written, articles that I've given you guys to put out, videos that I've made with different videographers like Superlex, GoPro videos, some of those different things. You're just me kind of finding my footing and figuring out what do I actually want to do and how can I do it the best way that I can.
Right. I find that the Vance and Hines thing interesting. Obviously, there are race shops in Indianapolis. Is that where you actually worked? Was out of the race shop?
Yeah, I did.
And did you get to know Terry at all, or?
Not really. They took us out for an employee lunch one time. I worked there for about 4 months, in the off season of 2019. Then the pandemic hit in the beginning of the year in March, right before the season was about to kick off. And it really helped me just kind of figure out where am I going with the different things. I was 19 years old at the time. And that was great to do in the off season. I learned a bunch of different things. It was really quite busy as a racer, where I basically had 2 full-time jobs at that point. Getting up every morning at like 5:30, driving 40 minutes to the race shop, working on cylinder heads. I met mostly the stuff was with Byron Hines, who's the head guy that I'd see, but I did work with Luciano, Ruben, and then Eddie Krawick was my actual boss. So,
well, those are some smart guys.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. Did you ever see, I think Hayden Schultz worked there a little bit, or he knows Gene Burcham real well, worked with him. Was Hayden there when you were there, or is he there now? Do you know the story on that?
Hayden was there before me. So I think we did the same kind of helper job, but we were separated by a little bit. Because I think by that time he'd moved to Arkansas. And then I helped get that with a friend of mine, Chuck Chiquetto. So that's how I got that kind of together.
So let's talk about something else here, Nolan, because like we've been talking about, you've provided a lot of good information to us about tuning and building R6's Supersport bikes. And I think, you mentioned why you didn't race in the 200, and a few riders seem to hold back and even some riders decided that they were going to race in Twins Cup this year instead of Supersport because of these new Supersport next generation rules and these new bikes that are involved. And I admit, and probably Paul would too, that, we didn't know. We were unknown about what it was going to be at Daytona. And it just felt like, there were some factors there that you couldn't figure out with a calculator or numbers or whatever, what have you. And it seemed to be, it was a lot more balanced than I expected it to be. And I had previously written a story about the Suzuki GSXR 750 that was going to be allowed, or is allowed in that class, but there's a couple parts to make it homologated to race. One of them is a fly-by-wire throttle, which is not stock on that bike, and it's not ready yet. They're working on it, so it eventually joined the class a little bit later in the year. That's an unknown. I don't know. Maybe that 750 would have been the overlord, but heck, you had a 955 V2, you had a 765 triple, and you had 599, 600 R6s and GSXR 600s, and you had a 636 Kawasaki or 2 as well. Were you surprised at how balanced it looked like it really was? It seemed pretty good to me, but you would know better than us. So tell us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, overall it looked pretty good. I think the interesting thing will be with the more displacement and some of those different things, it may not be better top speed, but I'm interested to see how it is coming out of the corner. Daytona's got like 5 corners on the whole track. At Barber or Road Atlanta, where you're going onto the back straight, that's the stuff that I think will be the true test, with the grunt on the twin, the Ducati and some of that stuff. But overall, it looked really good. Looking at the trap speed, everything looked very balanced. I'm really interested to see how this stuff goes. As personally, I'd much rather have to detune a bike than have to build one up, but we'll see how that stuff goes. I'm not entirely sure, so I don't want to speak out of turn. I wasn't there for the races, so I didn't see anything with my own eyes. It was just watching the stuff on TV and watching all the different live sessions. But yeah, I mean, overall, it looked really good. I'm interested to see the 750. That's
Me too. Yeah.
I have my own personal thoughts about that, but I'm not quite sure about that bike.
Right. I'm feeling the same way. So let's talk about you moving into this stock 1000 class with BMW on this S1000RR. For the fans that don't understand really the difference between that and Superbike, or maybe want to know a little bit more, what exactly can you do to that bike? I mean, one of the things I can lead you off with is, and obviously you can't change the triple clamps, you can't go with bigger forks or a swing arm, but are there some things you can do, and tell us what those might be or are?
So the difference between Superbike and stock 1000, Superbike, basically I can also use what it costs to run per weekend. The cost for an estimated stock 1000 ride per weekend is about $5,000 per race weekend. For Superbike, the bare minimum is like 16 grand. So the
Wow.
price is significantly more. Superbike, you can change so many different things. The forks are much better. For stock 1000, we have a price cap on the electronics, how much those can cost, the suspension front and rear, and you can't go above that. There's basically one homologated suspension or like level of suspension, whether you're running K-Tech or Olin's or Bitubo or whatever. But for Superbike, it's so much more. Superbike's really interesting. Stock 1000, I think it's really interesting is just how many people you see running up at the front of those races, where it's kind of a newer class, so there's people still into it. Back when there was Super Stock 1000, that class I consider to be more of like super sport than an actual stock bike. Just they were running much different parts than just a stock bike. We have to run stock calipers, stock triples, mostly stock stuff. We can change the electronics and the suspension, but that's about it. So yeah, and then the difference between the M1000 versus the S1000, the M1000 is a better quote unquote race bike, just with some of the different pieces they have. Like it has winglets on the BMW, and it has some slightly different front suspension. And then you can also actually change the swing arm pivot angle. But with so many different things, it's, do you actually have the ability to change it? Do you have the time? Do you have the manpower? Do you have the brain power to know what you need to change? Because you may want to change something with the electronics, but it's actually something else entirely, or you think you need to do this, but that's the wrong pathway to go down. There's the whole thing's so nebulous, and that's where stock 1000 versus Superbike is so much more complex. It's the cost that go with that stuff, and just all of those things is mind-blowing to me.
We talked to Brandon Posh before the 200, and obviously he won the 200, but we spoke to him about the fact that this was a one-off for him this year. He's going to be racing for Altus Motorsports on a GSXR 1000 in the stock 1000 class and Superbike Cup. So he's going to follow that pathway that Cam Peterson did and Jake Lewis did in his comeback last year. And one of the things we asked Brandon about was kind of transitioning from, well, he was on a Moto3 style bike in England, and he's been on these Triumphs. He's been racing in Supersport on a Yamaha R6 like you. He raced on this Triumph at Daytona, but we asked him about moving up to the class, and it seems to be all of us here ride motorcycles. Some of us race them, and we all love motorcycles because they go really, really fast. And Brandon Posh said he's really excited and cannot believe how much more power a stock 1000 bike has. Are you looking forward to getting on a leader bike and really letting it stretch its legs?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's excited about the power. That's where some of the stuff with my height will actually be an advantage, where I can move on the bike in different ways. When the bike wheelies, if it does this, if it does that, I can move myself around in different things. So the added horsepower with me is great. I rode a BMW, or not a BMW. I rode a BMW once, but I also rode an R1, an R1S at a track day out in California at Chuckwalla with JP. So I have a bit of time on 1000. It's got a little bit less power, but it's the way you ride the bikes quite a bit different. So I think that's really interesting. And it's, yeah, but at the end of the day, and it's still a two-wheeled motorcycle at the end of the day. It's still a sport bike. So everybody has different ways of riding different bikes. So I'm just excited to move to a new class, new machine, new team. I still have my crew chief from last year working with me, Freddie Carswell from Superbike Unlimited. So I'm really excited for that, where he knows more about me, about my riding style and the way that I do things, and we can really work together on getting a good package put together for this BMW.
What is your team going to be called this year? What's the name of your team, Nolan?
Tom Wood Power Sports.
Okay, so you have for the longest time, I mean, since the beginning of you racing in MotoAmerica, have had Cycle Gear as a sponsor on your bikes. Will Cycle Gear still have some involvement?
I'd love to. Working through different things right now. I'm not going to rule anything out or say yes or no. Can't really say anything right now.
Okay. You've been with them so long and been doing stuff for them, man. I mean, it's like, heck, you've activated that brand more than almost anybody else in the paddock, probably more than anybody else. You mentioned
his deal.
yeah. You mentioned Freddie Carswell, who's with Superbike Unlimited down in Arden, North Carolina, and he's got a real cool mail order business, and he builds a lot of bikes. But I want to talk about your dad a little bit too. Your dad, Bill Lamkin, who I'm very fond of and see him in the paddock. One of the things I don't know the answer to, Nolan, so I'm not asking a question I already know. What is your dad? What does he do for a living? What is his background?
He's an electrician. So he's a union electrician in Indianapolis. That's kind of what he does.
Did he grow up with motorcycles? I mean, what's your motorcycle connection?
So my dad he was a gearhead. He liked cars. He likes bikes. He likes everything that has an engine. And the story was that he always wanted to buy a motorcycle, but his parents wouldn't let him. He saved up all his money to buy this thing in the Sears catalog, and my grandma wouldn't let him. So then he had to do stuff on his own once he was out of it. So I think he built some drag bikes just for club stuff. I think Muncie Speedway is what it is in Indiana. So initially he asked me, like, hey, do you want to start drag racing? He wanted to give me like one of the little things and take out club racing. And I was like, no, Dad, like I want to do the turns. So that's how I actually got started racing. On my mom's side of the family, my great grandfather owned a Norton and a Ducati dealership in Newcastle, Indiana. And he had a mattress store. So the mattress store was in the front and the Ducati dealership and the Norton dealership was in the back. And every year they'd have to take the pictures to send into the dealership. So they take all the mattresses out, put the motorcycles up in the storefront, put them up in the windowsill, take the pictures, pull the bikes out, put all the mattresses back in, and then sell bikes out the back. So my grandfather on my mom's side, he started riding, I think, at 15, because I think that's when you could start. And I think 2 weeks into having his motorcycle, he broke his jaw on a fence. So then my mom started riding. My mom's side of the family, riding's been in for generations. My great grandfather, I think, rode cross country in a sidecar with my great grandmother in it, and then like broke his collarbone or something, and then rode back from like Colorado with a broken collarbone in a sidecar. And I don't know if you've ridden a sidecar, but those things are crazy to drive because it's not like a motorcycle. You're having to brute force steer the thing because it doesn't lean at all. So that whole thing is just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I don't like those things. I mean, I know Trig Westby has his it's like a 1920 something Harley Davidson, and anytime I see when they can lean those things over and lift them up. And I know there are some crazy contraptions that are maybe let you lean, but being on a motorcycle and not being able to lean it is so weird to me. And that's kind of the case with a sidecar, right? You can't lean them over unless you flip the sidecar up in the air, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And the thing that he had was it was not the little thing that Trig Westby has. It was much bigger than that. So yeah.
I've seen some crazy ones though with sport bikes where they're all articulated and everything, but not my bag though. I'd rather put somebody just on the back with me. So here's something I want to ask you. This is something that comes up or a lot of fans don't know. There aren't that many riders in our paddock that have motorcycle licenses to ride on the street. Do you?
No, I don't.
Yeah. I mean, why is that?
I've got a couple reasons for it. Really, it's just not like what I find fun about riding a motorcycle. I'm not going to find that on the street. I like basically I ride a motorcycle for the feeling in which kind of everything else disappears, and it doesn't feel like I'm moving on the track, but it feels like the track's moving underneath me and I'm just staying still. That's what I really like. That's when I ride good. That's when I feel that. I'm not going to feel that on the street. The whole time I'm on the street, I'm going to be terrified, afraid of other people, whatever. I like riding my bicycle. I ride my bicycle on the street and I can do that. I'm not going to ride a motorcycle. I know Michael Gilbert has his street license, but that's mostly for his different articles and things that he writes. So
where do you see yourself after maybe you decide that you're not going to be actually racing? I'm sure you're still going to be in the paddock. I could see you as being a technician on a team, owning a team, all kinds of things related to the technical aspects or the running of a team, because you've done it for yourself. I think you're going to have a long career, even beyond your racing, and you're only still 21. So I'm not trying to age you, Nolan, but I'm just curious. Have you ever thought in the future about, how you're going to sustain yourself later on?
Kind of yes, and mostly no. I'm focused on my racing right now. I'm sure is what everybody would say. I know that there's things that I can do later on. There's certain things that I would really, most of the stuff that I do with the articles and the different things like that it's trying to teach a younger version of myself the things that I wish I knew back then. So if I can own a team one day and be that person that I wasn't really able to have, I think that would be great. But every year, whenever my birthday comes around, I feel old. So
it's what old is, Sean.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, but the thing is like there's new riders, there's new stuff all the time, and it's like, oh, I'm 21 now, and then there's somebody else who's 16 lighting the world on fire. But yeah, I mean, I've had conversations with different people, and I just want to focus on winning races now and doing what I can do now. Stuff in the future that'll happen in the future, and I can deal with that as it comes.
I think Mark has ruined it for everybody with that age thing.
I know.
He's like 27 and he has 8 world championships or something ridiculous. So.
That's right. Hey, Nolan, so when exactly does your season start? Are you going to be racing at COTA?
So I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I don't think we race at COTA. I believe Stock 1000s starts at Road Atlanta, but I know a friend of mine who's going to race at COTA, and I thought he was racing Stock 1000. So I'm not entirely sure. Different parts and that stuff that are coming in now. I did an interview with Road Racing World back in October talking about Stock 1000 versus Supersport 600 and some of that stuff. And supply chain is really quite a big issue. So we're working on getting parts in and some of that other stuff kind of put together. The contract for my deal got signed a bit later than I was hoping for, which I think everybody will always say. But now we're working on getting the parts in. So we may race a COTA, we may not. I don't think Stock 1000 goes there. I believe it's only Superbike.
Well, and I don't know. I mean, forgive me and fans forgive us for this, but I thought the same thing as you, Nolan. I thought that there were going to be some Stock 1000 riders that were going to be racing and I thought possibly you could race a Superbike Cup at COTA, which is a little weird because normally you race in Superbike Cup on the same weekend that a Stock 1000 race is. So I know some riders are starting in Stock 1000 will be starting at our round after that at Road Atlanta, but I think there are some things I'm a little bit caught off guard with that. This as you are too. But let's talk about Superbike Cup. Will you be riding in Superbike Cup in any of the rounds, either right off the bat or at some point in the season?
Yeah, I'll be racing in the Superbike Cup. That's what our plan is, to run Superbike Cup and Stock 1000.
Yeah, I mean, they say that it's almost a no-brainer to do it, right? Because you get your tires and there's a chance to make some money there. And is that kind of your reasoning on it too? Is gives you more track time and development time on the bike?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple different reasons for me why I would like to race Stock 1000. One, you get more races in the weekend. So for me personally, the more time that I can get on this new bike, the better. So racing Stock 1000, which are generally shorter, and then doing the Superbike Cup, which those races are only one lap longer than what the Supersport race was already. So it'll be about 30 minutes long. Stock 1000 is about 20 minutes. Also, just with traffic and some of the different things in the Stock 1000 class, running the Superbike Cup, I believe you get to race and ride in those other qualifying sessions, or you have to be top 5, or I don't remember exactly how it works, but it doesn't really matter. That's what we're doing, getting more track time, getting more races, getting more data on this bike, and helping me grow and develop as a rider.
Well, this is an exciting thing for you, not only be moving up for a big bike, but absolutely to, to be able to now take your technical aptitude and apply it to this larger bike as well as your racecraft. But we're looking forward to hearing some of your analysis of stock 1000 bikes. And, we really appreciate when you provide us with technical articles that we can put on our site, because the fans love to see it. And certainly your awesome videos from Chuck Waller when it's from the point of view of your brake lever or your foot or something like that. You kind of pioneered that. So we'd love to get some more of that from you. But for now, we're going to let you go on now, Nolan, but I really appreciate that you pretty much kicked off and announced your team on our podcast, Paul, and I appreciate that you did that with us. And, good luck this season, and we'll be following you very closely.
Great. Thank you guys so much. I can't thank you enough for having me on the podcast, and love to do it again.
Yeah, Nolan, again, let me wish you the best of luck, and I'm looking forward to seeing you, I guess, at Road Atlanta, maybe COTA if I get lucky.
I plan on going to COTA as a fan, so see everybody there.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.